vast sun-scorched heart of the savanna, some places just hold their breath. They're the places animals avoid, where the wind seems to whisper warnings. At the center of one of these places sits a well, abandoned for reasons older than anyone can remember. They say it's not water that fills its depths, but the echoes of those who are foolish enough not to listen. This is no ordinary well. It's a gateway to the spirit world, and the vengeful deities who live there are always thirsty. Across the continent of Africa, from the dense forests of the Congo to the grasslands of the Masai Mara, water has always been seen as the sacred source of all life. It's a symbol of renewal, a deep connection between our world and the realm of the spirits. In many traditions, bodies of water aren't just physical resources, they're living things, home to powerful guardians and ancient gods. Rivers, lakes, and springs are thresholds where the veil between worlds is at its thinnest, but it's often the well, dug deep into the belly of the earth, that holds the most mystery and the most danger. In African folklore, a well is so much more than a hole in the ground. It can be a place where the community comes together, sharing stories and laughter, but it can also be a site of immense spiritual power, a portal that demands respect. Legends talk of wells with magical qualities, offering healing or wisdom to those who approach with a pure heart. But other stories are whispered in hushed tones, tales of cursed wells, where the water isn't meant for the living. These are places of judgment, where darker forces lie in wait, and that brings us to our story. It centers on one such place, a well known to the nearby villages only as the Thirsty One. For generations, elders have warned their children not to play near its crumbling stone edge. They tell them, whatever you do, don't listen if the wind carries the sound of your name from its dark mouth, because the elders remember the stories. They remember the story of Adia, and they know that this well doesn't drink water, it drinks souls. The season had been cruel. The sun was a merciless eye in the sky, baking the earth until it cracked and bled dust. The river had shrunk to a muddy, sluggish vein. The crops withered, and the faces of the villagers grew tight with worry. It was in this time of desperation that Adia, a young woman known for her proud spirit and her impatience with the old ways, began to look toward the abandoned well. Her mother had warned her, her voice trembling with an old ancestral fear. The Thirsty One is not a well of relief, my child. It's a place of sorrow. The spirits there don't give, they take. Respect the warnings. But Adia's son was sick with fever, and her heart was knotted with a fear that was stronger than tradition. She watched the other women walk for miles to the nearest clean stream, their backs bent, their steps slow. She heard the elders chanting prayers for rain that never came. To her, their faith felt like waiting for nothing. Their stories felt like chains. Old stories won't cure my son, she told her husband. Her jaw set. Fear won't fill our gourds. I'll go at dusk. If the spirits are there, they'll see the desperation in my heart and show mercy. Ignoring her family's pleas, Adia grabbed her empty water pots and began the forbidden walk as the sun bled across the horizon. As she got closer to the well, the air grew still and heavy. It was silent. Even the wind seemed to die, refusing to blow past the circle of dead gray earth around the stone structure. She reached the edge and peered down. The darkness was absolute, a void that seemed to swallow the dying light. No reflection, no ripple. The water, if there was any, was as black and silent as a forgotten grave. Confused, she lowered her bucket. The rope coiled into the abyss and hit the bottom with a dull, soundless thud, like it landed on soft earth, not water. She started pulling it back up. It felt strangely heavy. That's when she heard it. A whisper, faint at first, like rustling leaves. It sounded like her name, Adia. She froze, her hands gripping the rough rope. It's just the wind, she told herself, but the air was dead still. She pulled faster, her heart hammering against her ribs. You were brave to come, the whisper continued, clearer now, seeming to rise from the mouth of the well. It was a melodic, sedulous ink, waiting and setting. It was not one thing, with one time mention. We know your heart's desire. We know about your child. Adia's fear began to mix with a tiny sliver of hope. Could the stories be wrong? Maybe this was a kind spirit, one that understood her pain. After all, many tales told of water spirits who granted blessings. "I need water," she called out, her voice trembling. "My son is sick. I mean, no disrespect." "We don't offer water," the voice replied, its tone losing some of its warmth. "Water is for the living, and this is a gateway to the other world. But we can offer a cure. We can offer life. All we ask is a trade, a promise." The bucket finally reached the top. It wasn't filled with water. Inside, there was a single, perfect, luminous white flower, its petals glowing softly in the twilight. It was beautiful, otherworldly, and seemed to pulse with a gentle energy. "What promise?" Adia asked, mesmerized by the impossible flower. "Your devotion," the voice hissed, now sharp and demanding. "You came to a sacred place, seeking power you don't understand. You disrespected the balance. The spirits demand a price for that arrogance. Promise yourself to us. Become a guardian of this place. Forsake the world above, and your son will be healed before the moon is high." A cold dread washed over Adia. This was no benevolent god. This was a trap, a lure from a vengeful entity, angered by her trespass. The legends were true. The well was a place of judgment, and she had been judged. Tears streamed down her face. She thought of her son's feverish body, then of a life spent in this cold, silent place, bound to a spirit of darkness. She pulled back from the well, shaking her head. "No," she whispered, "I won't." A terrible silence followed. Then, a mournful cry rose from the depths, a sound of pure rage and sorrow. The glowing flower in the bucket instantly withered into black dust. The ground trembled, and a sudden, violent wind whipped around her, tearing at her clothes. The whispers were no longer seductive. They were a storm of angry, tormented voices, the souls the well had claimed before her. Terrified, Adia turned and ran. She didn't look back. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs gave way, collapsing at the edge of the village just as the full moon rose in the sky. When Adia's husband and the villagers found her, she was incoherent, muttering about a withered flower and a promise demanded. Her body was ice cold. They carried her home, her eyes wide with a terror no one could understand. And her son? He was no better. The well hadn't healed him. It had only shown its wrath. Over the next few days, a strange sickness fell over Adia. Her skin grew pale and almost translucent. She refused all food and water, saying it tasted of dust and sorrow. At night, she'd whisper to unseen figures, her words fragmented and full of fear. The villagers knew the spirits of the well had marked her. They hadn't taken her body, but they were slowly, mercilessly pulling her soul down into the darkness she had disturbed. She died on the 7th day. Her last breath was a faint, sighing whisper that sounded just like the wind over an open grave. The very next morning, her son recovered completely. The price had been paid. The well had taken a life for a life, a soul for a soul. Rebalancing the scales Adia had dared to tip. The fate of Adia became a new, chilling chapter in the folklore of the Thirsty One. The story wasn't just a warning, it was a crucial piece of wisdom. It reinforced the sacredness of such places and the need for spiritual respect that had been passed down for generations. The well wasn't simply evil, it was a guardian of a boundary, and its vengeance was a response to that boundary being violated. It perfectly embodied the dual nature of water spirits in many African beliefs, beings that can be healers and protectors, but also dangerous and destructive when shown disrespect. From that day on, the well was sealed. The villagers rolled massive stones over its mouth, not to contain the spirits, but to protect the living from their own desperation. They poured libations and offered prayers, not in worship, but in apology, seeking to restore the harmony Adia had broken. The story of the abandoned well lives on, a stark reminder that some gateways aren't meant to be opened. It teaches that the forces of the spirit world, much like nature itself, are powerful and demand reverence. And it reminds us that there are some whispers we must never, ever answer. The folklore of cursed wells and vengeful water spirits is a powerful theme that runs through many African cultures, teaching lessons of respect, balance, and consequence. These are more than just scary stories told around a fire. They are vessels of ancestral wisdom. What moral stands out to you the most from Adia's story? Let me know in the comments below. And if you appreciate these dives into the deep and often dark world of folklore, please consider liking this video and subscribing for more tales from the heart of our world's oldest traditions.